Well, hello there. So, something you might not know about me. I don't love or even like active loudspeakers for a long list of reasons that we won't get into, but these aren't bad at all. And with a warm welcome back to New Record Day, let's find out why. The Triangle AIO Twins are a pair of active loudspeakers that host a laundry list of interesting features. For starters, they have a built-in amplifier on the back of the speaker, offering a wide range of connection options that cover just about every audiophile base that I can think of. If you want a simple analog input to use your favorite desktop DAC, sure, not a problem. The Twin offers your choice of either RCA or auxiliary inputs using a 3.5mm jack. If you want to remove all the clutter and simply stream straight to the speaker using Bluetooth 5.0 aptX, yes, you can do that too. Now, what about high resolution? Sure. Even while streaming, you can expect 24:192, so that's not a problem at all. In the event where you wanted to connect your TV to this using a digital connection, the Twins also offer an optical input as well. In the event where you have an external USB hard drive with music on it, you can even connect this to the Twins and voila! Your library is ready to play. Last but not least, with the flick of a switch, you can also play your favorite records using the built-in moving magnet phono section, and would you know it, even control the speakers using the included remote. So yeah, the modern audiophile does have a lot of choices with these little speakers, and while there are many folks out there who want this Swiss Army knife-like approach in a pair of speakers, I don't. I know, I'm a weirdo. I like my rig, and I like components. I like swapping out DACs, phono stages, preamps, and amplifiers. For me, trying different gear is part of the fun, and it drives me nuts to feel limited, which is just one reason why I haven't embraced this all-in-one approach to a hi-fi system. I'll bet you're waiting for the but, aren't you? See, this is why we get along so well. But if an all-in-one system sounds good, then you know what? Swiss Army knife-like stuff just becomes icing on the cake, and would you know it, Triangle, at least in my opinion, made a speaker that to me sounds pretty dang good. So let's talk about that. One of the things that I was most curious about with the Twins is how did they do this? I mean, how did they come up with the voicing of the speaker, or to be more precise, how did they manage the crossover? With all of these whiz-bangs and doodads included, I wasn't sure if the entire speaker was digitally controlled, and while this would have been fine for some folks, I was really hoping to find remnants of something passive inside the speaker. Cracking open the back, I was delighted to see some inductors, capacitors, and resistors. Now, don't get me wrong here, folks. There was nothing exciting about the quality of the parts I was looking at, but I must confess, it was nice to see that what we have is a passive crossover in these speakers that is simply controlled by an amplifier with a lot of features. This also opened the door to further investigation with measurements and made the speaker review feel a lot more at home. But first, how do these things actually sound? To my ears, the AIO Twins get out of the way of the music for the most part. I did take notice of two minor gripes, but all in all, I think these sound pretty dang good. First, the very top end of the Twins was slightly elevated. It sounded clean with a fair amount of air and extension that you can expect from the tweeter. While this elevation is certainly noticeable, I never walked away from this speaker feeling like it was overly bright, but did showcase a little more emphasis on the top, like a lot of the Triangle speakers that I have spent time with. Beyond the upper mid-range, where decay and time domain information reside, I don't have any real issues with what I heard from this speaker, and I liked its presentation up top. As we move into upper mid-range, where we find S sounds or sibilants in vocals, I did take notice to a little bit more energy in this area than what I would call linear or a straight line. This was one of my gripes. Some female vocals can sound a little bit forward, but all in all, nothing super forward or super offensive. For folks who are looking for a little more exciting upper mid-range or some more snap in the music, these will do that when listening on axis and with the speakers pointing at your shoulders or beyond that. Things do smooth out quite a bit, and that was how I preferred to listen to these. In the heart of mid-range, or at least the top part of the mid-range, I liked what I heard from these speakers, and I think that most female vocals sounded quite linear, with only the S sounds being a little bit trickier to completely celebrate. As for male vocals, this was a little bit more of a toss-up, as I did notice that some baritones or bass vocals sounded a little more damped than what I would call perfect or perfectly precise. This woofer seems to offer a fair amount of texture and tone, but isn't quite as precise or clean sounding or quick sounding as some of the best examples that I have heard. Checking out bands with lower vocals like the National, I did notice that the bottom part of Matt's voice sounded slightly muffled when compared to my reference speakers. As for the sound clips, which you can hear for yourself, pay attention to the very last track, which features a pretty detailed percussion section. If you listen carefully when comparing the reference recording to the Twins, there is more detail in the lower drums, and it sounds like you can hear more of the details in the hits and the resonance from the drums themselves. Anyhow, I did reach out to Triangle, and it turns out that the woofer is made of paper, which honestly, it surprised me. As I've mentioned more times than I can count, paper cone drivers are my go-to, and to be honest, my gut kept telling me that this was an aluminum driver, but alas, I was wrong. As for male vocals, tenors or higher, they sounded quite nice, and the further away that we got from lower pitches, music sounded more linear and true to the recording, at least to me. I also appreciated most acoustic instruments that sat in the mix above, let's say, 100 to 150 hertz, and with the Twins, found most of the details in the music were rendered with clarity and a fair amount of precision. As for musical instruments in the lower ranges, I could take it or leave it, as I wish I just had a little bit more texture and detail to work with, but all in all, it wasn't so damped that I could call it well farts, and keep in mind, I've heard exactly that in so-called hi-fi speakers that cost a lot more than the Twins. For folks who are big into detail and texture in bass notes, might not love everything about how an upright sounds on the Twins, but for folks who care more about a punchy or a rounded bass, might be completely satisfied with what these things can do. Speaking of bass, the Twins also offer a subwoofer output, which is clever. In my room, I got bass down to around 50 hertz, which is a nice point to cross over to subwoofers, and I would imagine that the integration would be very easy to implement. Also, with my room measurement, this was with the speakers a good 8 feet into the room, so please note that with these being rear ported, you will most likely be able to hit lower extension when having these close to the walls behind the speakers. So yeah, EQ can indeed change everything about how these speakers sound. Taking a quick peek at how the EQ works in this measurement, you can see it's more of a broadband or tilt EQ, and according to the manual, adjustments are made in 1 decibel increments. Starting with red, which is the default setting, you can see these increments going down in orange, yellow, green, and blue. At the same time, taking a look at this shot, you can see how easy it was to manipulate the entire response using the bass and treble adjustments. Red is the default setting, while yellow is 2 decibels down in bass and 2 decibels up in treble. The orange line is the opposite, with the bass turned up 2 decibels and the treble turned down 2 decibels. So I gotta say, I liked how this EQ was implemented, and while it's not surgical, it did lend itself to making large, quick broadband changes to how these speakers sound, and could make them more versatile in different listening locations because of how this EQ works. All right, folks, grab yourself a pair of headphones and let's give the AIO Twins a quick listen. In this clip, no EQ was applied, so this is what you can expect from the speaker right out of the box. The mics used are the Earthworks QTC40s and my recorder is the Zoom F8N. What I'll do for this comparison is play the reference clip and then the Twins. All right, headphones on, let's go.
Engineer, where are you headed? Engineer, where are you headed?
No hubiera pensado que yo me iba a enamorar, jamás no quería saber nada más, nunca más. No hubiera pensado que yo me iba a enamorar, jamás no quería saber nada más, nunca más.
I can tell some deviations from the original clip, but all in all, I don't mind what I'm hearing from these speakers. And for me, at least the way I would treat these is to use them as a desktop speaker where I'm not critically listening, but just jamming out while I'm working on other stuff. These are fine. What do you think about the clips? What did you notice about the Twins? Leave your comments down below, and let's finish up taking a peek at the speaker measurements. All right, so in my gated measurement, which gives us data from 200 hertz and up, the little Twins don't look bad at all. From 200 to 500, they're within a half dB and offer a broad rise in response from 600 to 2K. But keep in mind, this is rather subtle and only a couple of decibels. From 2K to 5K, there is a shallow dip in the response, again about 2 decibels, and then after that, a somewhat elevated response throughout the rest of the band and one peak way up high around 15K. That last peak doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me at all because we all know in the room this typically smooths out, and showing our in-room measurements again, that's exactly what happened with the Twins. As for the horizontal response, it's good. I'm showing a pretty tight follow away, and even when 40 degrees in either direction in blue, the speaker offers a pretty consistent and tight horizontal access. As for the vertical response, this is much tighter grouping than what we saw even in the 40th anniversary model that we reviewed, and it's pretty dang impressive. Even when the mic is 16 inches above the speaker, the overall response still looks good, and taking the horizontal into account, the overall room response of the speaker should be pretty consistent, which is what we want. Or at least what I want. And hopefully you do as well. As for the spectral decay or waterfall, it's pretty clean with a couple of small traces of what could be stored energy, but again, this all looks fair for the most part without any real excessive energy to be concerned about. You know, priced at $1,000 for everything that Triangle is giving us to play with, the AIO Twins really are a decent way to go for those who want a one-and-done hi-fi solution. I know that I am pretty critical about sound, and I was rather hard on Triangle in the last review that we knocked out, but for those of you that thought that maybe I was just being mean to be mean, well, here we have the Twins. They offer a ton of flexibility for many different listeners and environments, offer a passive crossover that from my perspective was voiced well and doesn't have a ton of issues or deviations from the reference signal, comes with a nice sounding built-in amplifier with the addition of being able to EQ the speaker to taste, and would you know it, gets a positive nod from New Record Day. These are fine. Triangle did a good job. And with that, I will see you triangle-loving audiophiles in the next video.